Okay, let's get going, shall we? First of all, thank you so much for coming. We have just about a capacity crowd. I was hearing a moment ago that we've got people pouring in from the back who hadn't registered, but they get in for free, so what can you expect? Great to be here. Let me just tell you the title of this. It's Physical Activity, a Strategic Imperative for Health and Economic Prosperity, and we'll look at this in just a moment. I should introduce myself. My name's David Eades. I spent much of the last 25 years with the BBC covering issues of sport and physical activity and indeed inactivity. It's a subject that means quite a lot to me. I would also say I've just flown in from Chinese Taipei and I was there for what was the island's biggest international sports event ever. I just want to recount one little moment in that event. It was the 4x50 meter mixed relay. And one team in particular went off like a bullet. And after the first two lengths, they were one whole length ahead of second, third, and fourth. By the end of the third length, they still had pretty much a length to play with. Then the last swimmer came in. She dived in, started a very deliberate, measured stroke going down the pool, which wasn't very quick. In fact, she was very slow. And little by little, we could all see that gap being eaten up and eaten away. And by the time she had about 10, 15 meters to go, she was overtaken. Not once, not twice, 3 times overtaken just before the close. And this lady's name was Tang Cheng Yao. You'd think it was a moment for a team to be downhearted. Well, there's a point to this, because Tang Cheng Yao is 97 years old. And courtesy to her participation, because she was racing in an event where the combined ages of the four had to be 280 or more. So she brought 3 60-somethings with her in that hope that maybe it would get them over the line. It didn't, but she was heralded as she should be, as a bit of a hero. Even better, she did win a gold medal in the 50-meter breaststroke. It was the 95 and over age group. I don't honestly know how many were in that particular race, but she had her moment. And I tell you, if you get a chance to see the picture, it is a picture of happiness, health, and the value of sport. So I just thought I'd throw that in as a sort of an uplifting positive to start us off for the course of this afternoon. On a slightly more serious issue, we have this report by the World Federation of the Sporting Goods Industry being launched here, moving the world towards an active future. You're all here courtesy of the WFSGI, which is a mouthful, but a very valuable organization nonetheless. And it's a great pleasure for me to introduce to you the CEO, Emma Zwiebler. Emma.
Thank you very much, David. As David mentioned, my name is Emma Zwiebler, and I'm the CEO of the World Federation of the Sporting Goods Industry. That is an incredible mouthful. David is right, and the acronym is not much better, WFSGI for short. But from my side, I'd like to wish you all a very warm welcome to our first ever side event at a World Health Assembly. And I'd like to start because as I look around the room, it's really an amazing feeling to see such a great turnout during a World Health Assembly of different stakeholders for an event that is solely focused on physical activity and its interconnectedness to people, planet, and prosperity. Now, I represent the sporting goods industry, and that is a topic that we love to talk about. Physical activity, sport, movement, play, they are at the heart of the very industry we represent. And we are also absolutely convinced that physical activity and grassroots sports are key drivers to improve public health, yes, but also to deliver economic outcomes. But we also know, and David touched on this is a serious event. We also know that the power of physical activity to transform lives is one that is so often and too easily overlooked. So I am really delighted that you came here tonight and you joined us this evening, knowing how busy your schedules are. I've had so many people say this is the 3rd or 4th event they've been invited to. thank you for being with us. We really appreciate you being here because tonight we're going to explore first, what do we mean and why do we believe in the fact that physical activity is a strategic imperative for health and economic prosperity? And second, we are going to take a deep dive into the industry's first impact report on that very topic, as David mentioned. We are going to look at what our industry is doing, the solutions that we have ready today, and at the unified call for action we are making for our industry to do more, but also for stakeholders to do more. But before we dive a little bit more into the session, I'd like to take a moment to give a special welcome to the guests that are joining us for this landmark event. First of all, to Dr. Ailan Li, the Assistant Director General of the World Health Organization. Thank you so much for being here. To Sir Gareth Southgate, a renowned name, of course, in the world of international football, having coached the England men's team for many years and, of course, been a successful player himself. To Dr. Jane Thornton, the IOC's Director of Health, Medicine and Science. To Andy Moose, the Head of Health and Wellness at the World Economic Forum. To Dr. Marcelina Coker, the Health Commissioner from Nigeria. And representing our members and, of course, Nike, to Dan Burrows, the General Manager of the Future of Youth Sport at Nike. Thank you all so much for taking the time to join us this evening. Now, I mentioned that this was our first World Health Assembly side event. We're very excited. But you might be wondering, who is WFSGI and why have we taken this moment in time to speak out now, to use our voice and to focus in on physical activity? So who are we? Well, we are the Global Trade Association for the sporting goods industry. We represent a broad range of brands, manufacturers and retailers, big and small, and serving a really diverse range of activities and consumers. And we're really pleased that many of them are in the room with us tonight. I think at the latest calculation, we have representatives from Adidas, Arena, ASICS, Decathlon, On, Nike, Puma, Speedo, Specialized, and Shimano. But overall, as a community and as a collective, and that's really important when we come to talking about the report, we represent about 70% of the global industry. That's nice. But what is important for tonight is that we have as our purpose to unite and support the global sporting goods industry to ensure a healthier, more active planet for all. And while that purpose statement intersects many priorities for our businesses, we have as our number one strategic priority to work with our members and with key stakeholders and partners to ensure that we play our part to get the world to move more. So the second question was, why are we speaking up now? And I think there are really three ways that I need to guide that answer. The first is, and I've spent some time today talking about this, that we are convinced that the world needs sport and physical activity more than ever before. Not for entertainment, not for commercialization, records, or championships, where it is often pigeonholed, but as an important tool to help drive improved public and social outcomes. I think we all know that we live in a world that is increasingly fractured, where opinions are hotly divided, and where, frankly, global optimism about multilateral initiatives and globalization is declining. But in amongst all of that, we know, and we know in this room with absolute certainty, that physical activity, sport, play, and movement have the answer to many of the health challenges that are faced by society today, whether it's mental health, rising occurrences of NCDs, the negative impacts of the digital world we have created and embraced, and particularly their impact on that critical next generation. Second, we are here today because of a recognition from our board, the top decision-making body in our organization, and our member companies that are in our physical activity committee several years ago, that while sport was growing, the power of sport was growing, it was not being harnessed properly to fight what was going alongside it, the rising physical inactivity crisis. And that recognition led to an increasing interest and engagement in the really great work of our colleagues at WHO, particularly in the physical activity unit, led by Dr. Fiona Bull and Dr. Rudiger Kresch. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. And that eventually led to the signing of what was, from our side, a very historic memorandum of understanding between our two organizations that solely focuses on how can we work better together to improve public health via increased levels of sport and physical activity. And that unit at WHO is responsible for the only globally comparable data set we have on physical inactivity, which has helped highlight the severity of this issue to many of you in this room, our industry included. And it's also an important check and balance on the unfortunately slow pace of progress that we have towards reversing that trend. And while I know that these data points may be familiar to many of you in this room, I think it's important that we start tonight with everybody on the same page around the key numbers on physical inactivity. 31%. 31% of adults are deemed to be inactive today. That's 1.8 billion people. That's bigger than the population of China. It's twice the adult population of India. And when we look at the youth numbers, it's even worse. 81% of adolescents, 11 to 17-year-olds, are deemed to be inactive. And that's hugely worrying, not just because of the size of the figure, but because as they move into adulthood, they are moving into adulthood with their health at risk, and they are also risking becoming a major financial and societal burden if those sedentary lifestyles they've developed as children become normalized into adulthood. And of course, that should cause us a huge alarm bell, because we know that 75% of deaths globally are caused by NCDs, with physical inactivity being one of the 4 main risk factors behind the occurrence of NCDs. And our colleagues at WHO have already calculated the cost. What happens if nothing changes? What happens if we leave this room and those stats stay the same? We know it will lead to 500 million more additional deaths by 2030, and we know it will cost global healthcare systems, at a conservative estimate, $300 billion. That's an astronomical amount of money, and what it means from our perspective is that there's less money being spent on the solutions because more money is still being spent on treatment. And if that all felt quite negative, that's because it is. But our third reason for being here today is that our industry, our organization, and the people that you will hear from today, we still fundamentally believe in the opportunity to turn this around, to support the inactive to become active, and to deliver a healthier, more active planet for all. And today, with the support of our member companies, as David mentioned, we wanted to use our voice and use this opportunity on the sidelines of the World Health Assembly to showcase what the industry is doing today to support the world to move more and to make a unified call for action. You should have received on your seats when you came in or at the sign-in desk the first sporting goods industry physical activity impact report moving towards an active future. And this report is a moment in time for us that is very important because it highlights the breadth of actions that our industry is already taking to help empower and inspire people to live more active lives and to reflect the importance of collaboration over competition amongst our member brands. Every single company that features in this report is a commercial competitor of one another, but they have come together because they know that tackling physical inactivity is bigger than one company, it's bigger than our industry, and frankly, it's bigger than most sectors, so we have to work together. The report features 26 companies showcasing how we can align as an industry for greater impact, how we are driving awareness of both the physical inactivity crisis and the solutions. That's so important. We are not coming with the problem. We know it exists. We are coming with solutions. And how we are fueling change. And it does so through a variety of programs that focus on transforming inactive communities, innovations within our industry that break down barriers to participation, and campaigns that change perceptions about what it means to engage in physical activity and sport, promoting inclusion for those who might have always felt excluded from an active life. But our report is also clear that we cannot do it alone. We know that we need more industry engagement. Our report proudly recognizes the work of our members who are already on this journey with us, but it also recognizes that our industry needs to do more. And it challenges companies who are not in this report, who are not in this room, to join those who are already leading the way and featured in the report. But critically, we also need to bring more stakeholders with us. We all, at the time of the Global Action Plan on Physical Activity being published in 2018, endorsed that systems-based approach that was outlined. And we want to use our report and this event today to call for a renewed effort to work more closely together to deliver healthier, more active, and more prosperous societies. And in the next hour, you'll hear from the great group of people that I introduced at the start, who each intersect sport and health ecosystems at different points. A world-renowned coach and player, the International Olympic Committee, the World Economic Forum, of course, our member brands, and the World Health Organization. And these stakeholders are all incredibly different, but each one is absolutely critical if we are to drive systemic change to deliver a more active world. Now, I will rejoin you at the end of the session, but I hope that what you hear over the course of the next hour will leave you with a really clear understanding of why our industry is raising our voice and what we are currently doing to tackle the inactivity challenge. But more than anything, I hope that this session will show you that this industry remains optimistic about driving change if we do it together, and that you will use your voice, whatever stakeholder group you represent, to ensure that physical activity, this cost-effective, high-impact tool to support people, planet, and prosperity, is given greater prominence in public health fora, declarations, and policy implementations. Thank you very much. This is where I have the really great privilege to hand over to Dr. Ailan Li, Assistant Director General at the WHO and the Division of Healthier Populations, to say a few words about our cooperation and what this means during World Health Assembly Week. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emma. Good evening. I think effective partnership makes a big difference in the current, very complex, highly demanding world. I hope you all believe such partnership. So, Excellencies, distinguished speakers, colleagues, and friends, warm greetings. Let me start by thanking you again, Emma, and the World Federation of the Sports Goods Industry for bringing us together. Thank you, really thank you for that convening role. This is the first event on sport, physical activity, and partnership during the World Health Assembly, as you mentioned. So I hope this will not be the last. Good start, thank you. This marks a very important step in our growing collaboration and confirms our shared commitment to promoting health through movement and the power of cross-sector collaboration. You have said many things, but still allow me to highlight 3 reflections with you from WHO perspective. First, physical activity is one of the effective solutions to the increasing NCD epidemic. I'm very sure many of us have been experienced or among our family how NCDs bother us, the NCD burden. Evidence is clear. Regular activity helps prevent heart diseases, cancer, and diabetes. I'm sorry, I'm a medical doctor, I go to diseases. And it supports mental health, and among many other benefits. As you just mentioned, the data are not so encouraging. Yet, more than 30% of adults and 81% of adolescents does not reach WHO recommended levels of physical activity, with important inequality with regarding gender, age, and income. So, we must reverse these trends. We can do it through great investment in prevention and health promotion, including physical activities. So physical activity is important. Second, the sporting goods sector is a valuable partner. I should acknowledge in the past, WHO partnership with private sector may be less. Now, Dr. Tedros really also pay attention for the much broader partnership, including youth, and the private sector. So we really welcome the Federation's new report, moving the world towards an active future. I love it, but maybe an active and healthy future for a future generation even. This report highlights how its member companies are helping to build a more sports-friendly world, and how the Federation convenes diverse actors to advocate and also unite for the change. As you rightly mentioned, the formal WHO Federation partnership began in 2023, quite late, but never too late. Since then, we have joined forces to promote evidence-based actions that increase safe and enjoyable physical activities. So my third point is, we are united by our commitment to multi-sectoral action and the collective efforts for creating more active societies. The WHO Global Action Plan on Physical Activity 2028 up to the 2030 highlights that encouraging people to move is really not enough. We need to address the root causes by tackling health determinants, including social, economic, commercial determinants. It is critical to work with our people to co-create healthier setting and healthy living environment that make being active the easy and the natural solutions. Safe streets, active schools, inclusive parks, affordable equipment, and opportunities for sports training and education all matter. I think they have to go together. There's no one single intervention will help. It's combination of the cost-effective preventive intervention go together to maximize not only health, but the other benefit. So achieving this requires collaboration and coordination across government sector, industry, civil society, academia, and media. Do not forget our media friends. By working together, we can transform shared commitment into lasting health and social impact. My dear colleagues, I really look forward to today's ideas and also the ideas to translate ideas into the actions. Very important. This will help us how we can strengthen collaboration and move closer to our shared goal. More active people for a healthier and also equitable future. Thank you very much.
Dr. Li, thank you very much indeed. Yes, and some key words coming out about partnership, which we'll dwell on in due course. So we're going to move to what's been called a fireside chat. You'll understand in a moment why perhaps it would have been more appropriate to call it a barstool chat. Don't worry, Gareth, but I'm not going in the wrong direction here. We have with us a true English footballing legend, Sir Gareth Southgate, 57 caps for his country, before going on to manage the England under-21s, who he then reacquainted himself with at senior level as he ran a period of time which proved him to be the most successful England manager since Sir Alf Ramsey. And that is going back to when I was 3 years old. So, that's a pretty big gap, and we owe him an awful lot for that. As you're going to find out also, he's hugely committed to issues of leadership, of the role of society in helping our younger generations, and it is a real genuine pleasure and honor, really, Sir Gareth, to invite you up onto the stage. I'll put you in this one. Sorry, it was a bit facetious to talk about a barstool chat, but the point is that last Saturday, Gareth was back at Wembley. What were you doing there?
Yes, my first club, Crystal Palace, were in the FA Cup final, which is, for those of you that aren't aware, it's the biggest cup competition in the world,
I thought
really.
you were going to say they're the biggest club in the world.
No,
Okay.
definitely not. But yeah, lovely. They won the first trophy in their history, so it was lovely to be there to watch. Yeah.
Well, as a Gooner, an Arsenal supporter, I'm sort of delighted for you. But no, seriously, many congratulations. But I think one of the lovely things about it as a story is, and you were there, so you probably got this in bucket loads, is one of those power of sport stories to create community and bonds and friendships which last a lifetime.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate to play sport at the very highest level and to coach at the very highest level. But fundamentally, my love of sport is its very beginnings. I've been able to affect in our national federation provision of football and PE from under fives right the way through to senior level. So I understand the importance of it. Sport is about communities. When we were playing national team matches in major tournaments, they are national events. There's probably only royal events in our country, coronations and funerals, that match that, for the whole family coming together, different generations, and connecting people. And the connection that sport brings is so important for health and well-being as well.
And actually for bringing youngsters into sport as well, isn't it? And that it takes something special nonetheless to make these things happen, to bring others in. And I'm going to flatter you again a little bit, but Gareth was club captain at Crystal Palace, and he was 23 years old. You've obviously got a record since that as a captain, as a coach, as a senior manager as well. Just give us a moment or two about leadership and the difference you feel it can make. And I think maybe particularly when you were working with the under-21s, that you're talking about some genuine teenagers. I mean, they're quite young boys, really, and you've got to keep them on a straight and narrow. So I imagine that's an absolutely pivotal time.
Definitely. Look, the role of a coach, of course, at professional level, you're there to win. But more importantly, you're one of the most important influences in a young person's life. That's the reason I started coaching, was I wanted to help people to be the best they could be. I thought I could have been a better player if I'd had more belief, perhaps slightly different coaching at certain moments. But young people that go at the weekend, they play sport for a junior club. It's about enjoyment. It's about health. It's about meeting and making friends. They might not have that support at home. We've got a big problem in our country of lack of male role models, a lot of fatherless families. And when they go to play sport, the coach can be that person that they trust, that they turn to for help through their life. So, I've got a youth coach that took me when I was 16, 17 years old, who I still speak to today. And he's been the biggest mentor in my life outside my family. And I've seen that replicated across sport in many, many instances.
What sort of things did he imbue in you then that you've cherished that means he's still a friend today?
Well, he believed in me. I was rejected. So again, sport.
Well, from your first club?
Yeah, so I was rejected as a 14-year-old. Sport is a talent pathway, the same as music, the same as acting. So there's lots of rejection along the way, and you have to build resilience. So when somebody invests in you as a young person and has belief in you, that's very important. But also important, you have to speak honestly. You're not perfect at any age, so you need feedback that helps you to improve, encourages you to get better. So I had that sort of person around me that gave me good values, or my family gave me good values, but he reinforced that. He pulled me up if he thought I was out of order with things, because young people make mistakes, and we have to be ready for them to make mistakes, but prepared to support them and help them get back on track.
Now, we've been talking up till now about someone who was mad on sport anyway. You're obviously in love with the game. You were going to keep going. Clearly, you knew what you wanted to do. Emma put up a figure there of 80-ish% of people inactive. We know the number of youngsters who are inactive or become inactive is just vast. What is your concern about that group? And then we can talk about what we do about it. And why do you think this is? And what are the impacts? What are their influences?
Well, I mean, clearly I have a better understanding of our own country, so I recognise there may be differences across different countries around the world, but when I was 6 years old, I used to walk to school, maybe a mile and a half, walk home a mile and a half. When I went to secondary school, I used to cycle. I used to cycle home for lunch because I couldn't carry all my books on my bike. Used to cycle back, used to play a game after school, and used to cycle home. So I'm cycling 8 miles a day, and I know the impact that had on my general physical fitness. The bit I didn't fully understand, and I've understood more as I've got older, is the mental side of that. You know, now I know I need to exercise because it helps me mentally. I get release of hormones. I get sense of strength and resilience from it. So we now have a very sedentary life where in our country, more cars on the driveway, kids get driven to school. We have a generation, I've got 2 young children that are now starting, one's at university, one's working from home, so not moving in front of a screen all day. We have children playing video games all day, so we've got a big problem with disconnection in our country with young men who are living a life in front of a screen, not active. So forget, the importance of professional sport. We're talking about just activity, walking, cycling, movement. That's going to end up with is ending up with serious mental health challenges. So suicide, the biggest killer of young men in our country, and I think across the world. It's then a cost to health services because obesity is a problem. So there are all these knock-on effects that we know the power that sport can have, not just for confidence in people. And of course, one of the things we have to do as coaches is make it appealing. But there's a reduction in sport in schools. There's a reduction of provision. So we're pushing our government for those things as well.
What then? I mean, you've got a room full from various sectors here, but they can all relate directly to what you're saying. I know you've said before, sport has to do some things differently. What is? I'm not saying there is an answer, but what would ideally be your route forward?
Well, with our National Football Federation, we needed to produce more facilities. So one of the things that happens less and less, parents are more concerned about children's safety outside. So general play isn't happening as much. We're overly protective. We stop kids climbing trees. We stop kids riding bikes and falling off and hurting themselves. And yet we have this online world where they're exposed to all generations and dangers that we know nothing about. They're up in there. So they were slightly unsafe outside. They're incredibly unsafe inside and online. So it feels as though we almost have to create more opportunities for active. And so that means investing in facilities, investing in clubs, youth clubs, where children can go and they can connect with people, they can make friends, but also there are active things that they can go and do.
Yeah, Dr. Li referenced the need for equitable provision of services and facilities as well. And I mean, the UK is like every other country. There are some very deprived areas. There are some which are extremely affluent. How much of a challenges that, and perhaps how much would you like to challenge some of the organizations here to say, you've got to focus on inclusion and work on it in the right area?
Well, most of our best players came from the most deprived communities. So there's talent pools in these areas, there's a hunger in these areas, but of course young people need direction and they need to see what's possible in life. You know, the reason that most young people don't achieve what might be possible is they don't realize what's possible. And so that's the beauty of sport. You do get role models that they can look at, aspire to from their communities. And I used to say this to our players: when you're capped for England, you know, you're a role model for your community. People from your town, from your city, will think that could be them one day. We've seen it with our women's football team. Big uptake in girls playing football in our country because they've seen it's possible. So professional sport can play a part in that, the aspiration and the inspiration. But it's a, you know, we're not talking about this topic to try and create professional athletes. They're a 0.000 whatever percent. We're talking about the public, people generally, the general population, and not just in sport, but running, walking, whatever it might be that gets people active.
Just get out and do something. I mean, we've got some examples within the report actually about, you mentioned coaching and some sort of mentoring examples, which perhaps will be touched on a bit later. But you have also said sports organizations have got to stop thinking about gold medals and start thinking about exactly what you're talking about now. And I would challenge that a little bit, because if you don't have that pursuit of gold medals, as well as the pursuit of greater physical activity, you're missing half of the gold dust of sport, which does incentivize people.
No, well, absolutely. And I think, as I said just previously, that's the inspiration and the aspirational aspect that can encourage a youngster to get off their couch and go and play or join their local club. Equally, we have to have the balance right of where that investment lies, because we have a broader responsibility to nations, and very often there are policies in place, but budgets sit in strange areas. You know, there's a lot of columns in government. You know, I know government is incredible. I had one of the hardest jobs in world sport, so I know these things are complex. And I know that for our government, you know, you've got health budgets, you've got education budgets, but somewhere along the line, we have to wake up to the fact that these things do all connect. And if sport in schools, for example, opportunities for activity in schools, you'll have a prevention rather than paying the costs of health. So your health budget, prisons, you know, in our country, prisons are full because of the disengagement with young people. And being in teams, being in sports where you get discipline, you get community, you experience so many different things, you will save money further along the line.
The rationale is just sort of blindingly obvious, but making that have a sort of be bought by governments and accepted that is a great thing for a health ministry to be supporting is still so difficult in many countries. I guess you run up against this probably. Do you see a little tilting of the dial at all, or where do you think the
well, it's what's brilliant about an event like tonight, because it's putting this on the table. Of course, for governments, so often the urgent overtakes the important, and I understand that. You know, you're elected, so you spend a lot of time on being elected. You then have ideas of what you'd like to change, and then events happen that knock you off track and affect budgets. But we have to keep drawing people back to the fundamentals and the reality that is staring us in the face, that obesity is across the world is increasing, and that is going to have an effect on health services and is going to be a cost to societies.
You were saying your children play sport. What do you do now?
Yeah, I run. I use the gym. I've started playing golf again. I've started playing paddle tennis, which is one of the fastest growing sports in the world, because actually the bar's quite low to entry. You don't have to be particularly good, as you'd see if you watch me play. So, but again, it gets me out. It gets me out. It gets me meeting new people. My son started playing golf. I love that. Why? He recently. I mean, he won't appreciate this. He's recently split from his girlfriend, but I know
golf is that important.
He's and I don't think it's because of golf, but I've seen that happen as well, by the way. But
that may be why she left.
There's a period of instability, possibly in a young person's life, but he's going to be outside for 4 or 5 hours, active, walking 6 or 7 miles, trying to get better at something. So, as a parent, I'm thinking, yeah, I'm happy with that scenario. That's not he's off with a wrong peer group, doing something that's inactive, stuck in front of a screen, eating poorly. So they're small things, but they're actually not small things.
I mean, look, we are privileged, aren't we? I play golf as well. Not that many people play golf or get that opportunity.
Sure.
So I suppose in terms of access to sport, so you mentioned paddle, which I think is a great example. It's quick and it's easy, and that's therefore a great entry point. A lot of our sports are neither of those things, are they? And is it perhaps, I think you said earlier about sport needs to innovate. Is this a point at which it really needs to innovate, and not for commercial survival, which is, I think, the familiar theme, isn't it? How do we stay attractive? How do we maintain our fan base, but actually to play a greater sort of societal role? How do they do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think sports and sports governing bodies can definitely play a part in that, but I do think we have to go back to education and schools. My first experience of being active was doing gym, was doing forward rolls in class, in a vest and my underpants. I think he didn't even have kit, so we didn't have the great sports brands that are represented here. But you were active. I learned how to cartwheel. They're movement fundamentals that are brilliant for then going into any other sport, but also just get people active and enjoying things. And we have to make those experiences enjoyable for young people. Even at 2021, one of our first tasks with our national junior teams was we have to want them to come back. So they've got their clubs where they love playing for their clubs. Their clubs are the ones that pay them. National team, they get an appearance fee that's been the same for 100 years. They've got to want to come. So we have to make it an environment they want to be a part of. And that applies to teachers at young ages. That applies to youth workers at young ages. It's got to be, you have to create environments where young people want to come, because we've all experienced PE teachers who put kids off doing sport. So, we climbed ropes, we walked along beams. These are all basic activities that start to develop your body and start to give you the opportunity to go and play other sports.
And it seems to me we have to recognize that the sensitivities of our young generation are different sensitivities. I'm still shaking off little Gareth in his underpants in PE.
Yeah, I appreciate that's not a good view. Yeah.
Obviously, you can't do that anymore. But we see at the moment a lot of progress in terms of girls playing sport and appreciation of their needs as well. Does that encourage you? I mean, you mentioned women's football in England. Yeah. It's obviously grown exponentially due to not least due to success on the field.
Yeah. Well, again, there were a lack of opportunities, lack of clubs. So one of the impacts of the women's football team doing well was that dads suddenly saw it as, that's, I can go and watch. I like the fact my daughter can play football. So whereas I don't think dads were taking girls to play football in our country. So that's another area that's opened up.
But there's still a huge amount of chauvinism within football, isn't there? Is that fair to say?
Well, what we shouldn't do is feel that it's the same sport. You know, clearly there are physical differences between men's football and women's football, but they are two different sports. And I know Emma Hayes, who's one of the best coaches we've had in English football, most successful now US national team, she hates the comparison between men's and women's football. You know, she said, let's just keep it separately. We're there, she was there to inspire young women to go and play and to be the best they can be. You know, I want my daughter ran the London Marathon last year. You know, the marathon, the number of people entering the marathons is increasing every year. And for me, it's one of the most heartwarming events I've ever been to, because you're competing against yourself. You know, you're just trying to get better. It doesn't matter. You know, I ran one marathon. People in fancy dress are going past me. 80-year-old ladies are. For me, it was humiliating. I'm a competitive person that's my whole life thinking I've got to win. And after 2 miles, I realized, this is different. You know, I've got a guy with, you know, in a 3-legged race going past me, he's attached to his mate. But everybody watching that event is supporting everybody that's in it. And these are the community things that happen that, the impact of those things are hard to measure, but they are impactful. You know, and in a time where the world is disconnected in so many ways and fractured in so many ways, those sorts of events bring people together, bring happiness, and it's around a sporting event.
Yeah, and can be intergenerational, which I also think is very important. I'm just going to hold fire for a moment. Look, we've only got Sir Gareth for a limited period of time, and I know and thank you, you've come over for this, and I know you've got a dash again, and we could chat for far too long, mostly about Arsenal, but I don't think you'd appreciate that. So I'm very keen to open it up to questions. If you'd like to ask a question, there's not going to be a shortage, I think. So there's a lady over here. If you can let us know who you are, where you're from, and by the way, questions only, please. I don't want interventions. You'll be red card to an intervention. Question and answer. Okay, thank you.
I've been warned. Hi, I'm Sarah from United for Global Mental Health, and I represent the Global Mental Health Action Network. We have 6,500 members in 170 countries. So I can't help but ask, and we talked briefly beforehand, could you tell us about the importance of mental health alongside physical health?
Yeah, no question. I think issues have always been there forever. I think what we now have a better understanding. So people were suffering with how they felt about themselves, self-worth. I think it's exacerbated now because the impact of social media. So, for example, young people, home for most young people is safe. They might go to school, they might be bullied. Now they can be in the comfort of their own home and attacked online, which is an incredible impact on mental health. You know, in the role I had, you're dealing always with international media, so not always a pleasant experience because people are going to write negative things. If I dipped into online, I knew that wasn't going to help me feel better about myself. Now I'm 54. My brain's developed not like an adolescent child or a young person, and I've got more robustness built up over a long period of time. But for young people, the impact of social media, for example, is increasingly difficult for mental health. So one of the ways of countering that is exercise, is going outside, is being in the open air, is experiencing natural things. And I think we clearly have a crisis in this area. exercise and is an enormous part of well-being. Sleep is an enormous part of that. If kids are on electronic devices all day, that's not going to help sleep. And sleep is one of the big things that allows the body to recover. You know, with our players, recovery, we looked at all sorts of gimmicky things that you could have spent thousands and thousands of pounds on. In the end, the key to them recovering was sleep, nutrition, and of course they get the exercise. But for people in more normal jobs, regular office jobs, sleep, nutrition, exercise, fundamental part of well-being.
Can we get the microphone? There's a gentleman here. And just as we get to there, is this a message that you pumped out time and again to your under-21s, for example? I mean, did you become a bit of a preacher man, a lecturer,
Well,
briefly?
My job was to coach them. That's not just about, crossing the ball and defending on the football pitch. That's about life. My job was also to understand the pressures in their life. Now, some of those pressures were in a professional capacity, but some were what was going on at home. Some was what was going on, they've got a young child that's ill, or wife's expecting a baby. They've got lots going on in their world. So we always wanted to provide support where it was possible, but also recognizing they didn't always want to open up about those things. So trying to make it acceptable to share those things, to talk about those things is very important.
Yeah, thank you. Question here.
Thank you very much, Liam from UEFA. You've mentioned the importance of fun and enjoyment, and I'd love to get your views on the fact that people drop off from football, especially because it's competitive and the enjoyment starts to go. So getting the balance right between grassroots and participation, and then getting people on a pathway to be elite. So that dichotomy between enjoyment and then the over-competitive piece.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a skill to coaching young players, and it's very specific. It's a bit like the difference between being a primary school teacher and a secondary school teacher. So with our national federation, we were definitely trying to encourage people that were really skilled at coaching youngsters to stay in that age group. Very often they wanted to move up age groups because the pay was better. So we were trying to make sure we paid junior coaches better to stay at that level because they were brilliant at engaging young people. I couldn't do that as well. I took my team's Sunday team for coaching, and I was all over the place. They're running everywhere. They're chasing dogs in the park. I remember driving my son home one day from training, saying, what was that? What was that all about? And he said, Dad, you've got to realize we're at school all week. We want to have fun. We just want to run around, and we don't necessarily want really structured coaching all the time. So, and of course, I then had this realization, no, that's not, again, we're talking about this 0.01%. Most of those kids are in professional academies from 8, 9, 10 years old now. So let's not have kids that are projects all the time. Let them enjoy their lives, let them live their lives to the full, and let them experience the freedom that sport and activity brings.
Thank you. I guess one last question. I'm sorry. Well, I've been told. Well done. A round of applause for that. One last question, because we're right up on the clock.
Thank you. My name's Kate. I'm from the Royal National Lifeboat Institution. My question is, can you swim? But I'm going to explain why I'm asking you that, because 300,000 people around the world drown every year. And we haven't really heard, apart from at the beginning, about swimming as a real literal life-saving sport. So I just wanted your attention and ask, can you swim? If not, we can help you.
Yeah. Well, again, I'm back to schools. I learnt to swim at school. And we did we did the whole diving for a brick with your pajamas on and all those things. So I don't know if that's still happening in schools again, and whether it's at the same level. But it's fundamental. There are so many areas that we have to embed from an early age, and I think it's a social responsibility. Yes, children should learn to read and write. Yes. An understanding of maths important, but a fundamental skill that can save your life has to be part of that.
Gareth, thank you very much indeed for that, and indeed for the half hour. So, ladies and gentlemen, to Sir Gareth Southgate, thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Thank you. Just to repeat, I know you'll have to go fairly shortly, Sir Gareth, so don't hesitate. When you have to go, you have to go. Great. Thank you very much. So I'd like to call our panel up straight away. They've been introduced already. So would you all please come up and join me up here, please? That's Dan, Jane, Andy Moose, and indeed Dr. Kamil Shoretire, who's the Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Health and the Government of Nigeria, and a great pleasure to have a government representative on the platform. Thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen. I think what we've just had is a fantastic and quite anecdotal appreciation of the value of sport, the way it can change people's lives, the need to have it, and when you don't have it, what you get. So let's look at some of the sort of the fundamentals and the more granular efforts being made to change our world a little bit. And I mean, you couldn't really ask for much more than a representative from the sporting goods industry, someone from the single biggest sports organization on the planet, the International Olympic Committee, from an organization steeped in recognizing the economic value of all this, and of course, a government minister. So thank you all very much indeed for being with us. Perhaps if I could just kick this off first of all, Dan, we have the report in front of us here, and I know you'll have to take it away to read it all, but we can reflect on some of it here. There are some extraordinary examples, but what's the value of it in your view?
So thank you, and it's nice to be here. First of all, I mean, I think a big congratulations to Emma and the full team for pulling the report together. I think, as was already said, it really does provide a foundation for us as an industry for the first time to look at what the collective action is across the whole industry around encouraging, increasing, and engaging people in sport and physical activity. So that for me is certainly the first big win, is actually for the very first time looking at our collective efforts and action. And that will give us a foundation to have deeper, more meaningful conversations in the future about quantifying that impact and measuring that impact. So I think that's the first thing. And then from a Nike perspective, I think it's hugely valuable internally within an organization as well to continue to make the case for why we're investing in sport and physical activity as an industry leader. And I think that will go across all the partners that work within the WFSGI. And I would say it's fair to say that Nike and many of those organizations have been investing in sport and physical activity for many years. So to be able to present that and present those case studies to the whole host of stakeholders that are here today, so that you can also see and recognize that work, but also as an invitation for us to collaborate and really scale that action.
Just very briefly, it's a case study which I've seen a little bit about, but it would be useful to sort of give the evidence to what you're talking about. We had the Olympics in Paris in 2024. France is a special case, actually, in terms of inactivity, particularly among girls. That's one area that you've focused on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm immensely proud to have two case studies within the report. And one of those, as you just referenced, is a partnership that we have in France. It started in Paris as part of our Olympic Games engagement, and that's called Teen Go Girls. And I think this is one of the things that the organizations, the brands, and the companies within the federation can actually bring as solutions, is tapping into the things that we're great at. So we've really looked at this program as an opportunity to bring Nike's innovation, something we're famous for. So how do we innovate in this space around getting more girls active? How do we tap into that innovation? How do we tap into our storytelling ability? So how do we use our platforms to talk about the opportunities around physical activity, but also inspire girls to be active, something that Gareth talked about. How do we utilize our whole ecosystem of partners, whether they're clubs, leagues, federations, or athletes, to inspire And they're the things that we have as an industry. But what's really exciting about the Team Go Girls program is it's a public-private collaboration. So Nike bringing that innovation, using our data and insights to create a program that is a partnership with the National Agency of Sport in France, who are also co-funders, and they have the ability to scale it across the country. And it's now going to 50 municipalities, cities across France.
I don't want to speak for Andy, but I know he would say, that's great. Where's the proof of the pudding? And have you got some sort of indicators that this is making a difference, a real difference?
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's also one of the things that's really exciting about that specific case study is we're using the flip of what was talked about before and using technology in a positive way and looking at how we use technology to measure the impact. And we've really looked at both in-person physical experiences, but also tech that provides experiences that can be tracked for young people and looking at the measurement there. And that's been a big part of making the case to the municipalities that are taking on this program.
Okay, thank you for now, Dan. Thanks very much. I should again say, I'm going to try and squeeze some questions in at the end from all of you as well. So if you've got something that springs to mind, even as we go, don't be afraid to put a hand up as long as you don't mind being ignored if I feel it's not the right time. Let me turn to Jane Thornton, Dr. Jane Thornton, Director of Health, Medicine and Science at the IOC. We could start with the title, actually, because I know you've taken over that office, but the title's changed.
Yes, absolutely. I think it was really important coming into this that, I mean, I wouldn't fault anyone if they thought the International Olympic Committee was about elite sport and not necessarily about physical activity for health. But in fact, it's been part of our charter, Olympic charter, that we are really looking at the transformative power of sport for all and across communities. And as well as that, even with our Olympic agenda 2020+5, understanding that the power of sport across communities and really thinking about strengthening the collaboration, the contribution of sport to the UN Sustainable Development Goals has really been a priority in the past few years. But for us, I still think there's a growing emphasis and an opportunity for leadership of the sports movement to contribute to physical activity for health as well. And so that really came to mind when taking on this role, that we used to be the medical and scientific department, and it was really the mandate to protect athlete health. That's very important still. But now it is, so essentially the health, medicine, and science department, but really that thought of health in sport, because that still has to stay a critical part of what we do, but also health through sport. So what we can do outside of Olympic Games to lead in the sports movement and understand the transformative power of sport as well for health.
You made the point very appropriately, I think, at the top. It's Citius Altius Fortis, isn't it? It's the fastest, the highest, the strongest. That's all about the sort of stuff that Gareth Southgate works with in terms of elite sport. So what sort of things are you doing then that go beyond that? Because, you know, yes, you get half the planet's eyeballs every 2 or 4 years, but what about this, the sort of grassroots stuff that you say you're doing?
Exactly. So part of it is really capacity building and understanding. We have a fantastic technical agreement with the WHO, and thank you to Fiona Bull. Thank you to all of you for the cooperation and the strengthened collaboration between us. And I think that aspect is also understanding what can we do at the grassroots level, how can we improve at the community level. So 2 quick examples might be even supporting through our NGO path, through looking at ways to improve physical activity counseling through healthcare workers in Tanzania as an example. Another one is our Let's Move app. So that was something that was created in 2023, an initiative to help people of all ages, whether they are at the elite level athlete or the 97-year-old swimming laps in a pool. How can we understand that across all ages and across communities, we can have people stay physically active? So we had 30 million people engaged through that initiative alone, and we continue to provide emphasis on that, as well as from the question on mental health as well, understanding the critical importance of mental health, and that comes through physical activity and through sport as well, and is one of our core pillars.
very briefly, you said 30 million engaged in that. Engaged actively or just following it
Yes.
on
Ex-
their mobiles?
Yes, not just looking at a screen, but in fact participating in physical activity as a result.
Okay, fair enough. Andy, let me turn to you from the World Economic Forum. I mean, one of the things in this report, sorry, I've lost my copy, is an emphasis on activity in the workplace, which perhaps particularly when you're talking about the sporting goods industry might be the last place you'd expect it to start. How useful is that? How important is that?
I think it's very important. I think that it's actually why I'm here tonight is that framing to me. Emma pointed out that in the report, there's a staggering increase or decrease in physical activity for youth. What that spells for our future economies, what that means for the future workforce, and what it means for the future of their individual health is quite significant. And so we really felt like, in addition to the $300 billion that's been identified in terms of potential cost burden from a health standpoint, there's another side of that coin that I think is often overlooked, and that's really that this is an economic growth story as well, or at least it could be. Through some of our research and support that we've done with McKinsey Health Institute, we've seen that there's the potential for 470 million additional healthy years between now and 2050 if you can tackle metabolic disease, if you can tackle non-communicable disease in a way that is encouraged through physical activity, because that's a key enabler to sleep, diet, and other important things in a healthy lifestyle. And then from an economic standpoint, $5.7 trillion dollars of potential growth in GDP that can come through a more productive and healthier society. So we think it's a critical component. I mean, that's one of 4 pillars in this report, is the healthy workforce piece. I think as an industry, the sporting good industry does a wonderful job. The other elements of that framework, campaigns, communities, innovation. Obviously, the industry is at the top of its craft in terms of messages to inspire and encourage all of us to embrace sport. The ability to innovate through product, but also through campaigns and engagement in the community. But I think the workplace is often overlooked, and I think it's also an area of strength for this industry. I was just speaking with one of our members from Technogym yesterday, and they were saying that over 80% of their corporate employees were ranked as highly active. Well, I can speak for the World Economic Forum and other headquarters. We're not at 80% highly active. I mean, part of that's the ease of access.
It's Technogym, isn't it? You saw it as
is.
part of
It is.
the whole
With Technogym, and I'll give them credit, because not only are they engaging their employee base with ease, convenience, lower, favorable pricing, but also they're carrying that into their communities. They've long been a champion of something called the Wellness Valley in the region where they're headquartered in Italy. And I think the opportunity to really engage workforce well-being and couple that with programs in the community, that's when we all start finding health and exercise and activity in all parts of our lives.
And
really
sorry to interrupt you, but I mean, Technogym is a great example because it works, but it's a bit of a one-off as well. And you're at the World Economic Forum, where you probably don't have new running machines as part of the general day-to-day warp and weft of what you do. So what do you do? What do you do? What do you do at WEF for your staff, and indeed for your good self?
And I'm based out of the New York office and not the Geneva office. They have, even today we were having a meeting and there was noise coming through. It sounded like a disco club or something. And in the meeting office next door, during lunch, they were having an exercise class. Not a gym, not an ideal facility, but I think there's a lot that we're trying to document and share with others the importance of design, of physically creating spaces where people can more easily engage in activity, but also we're trying to share learnings at the managerial level. How do you have that standing meeting, even small things where you can have a walking meeting or things like that really go a long way. I mean, someone told me once that the hardest part of getting started is getting started, and I think for many of us, getting moving, even in small ways, is really important. And so at the forum, we are implementing, trying to walk the talk of not just programs around physical activity, mental well-being at the individual level, but we know that it's actually easier to communicate and convince people as a group rather than targeting messages to the single person. So it's not just about individual benefits. It is about that culture. It is about having your leaders model those behaviors and then having your manager be supportive of that type of activity as well.
And building groups. And there is no bigger group on this platform than the one represented by Dr. Kamil Shoretire, Nigeria, 230 odd million people, all of whom need exercise. And no doubt you have similar struggles within government, but within the country and within the sort of social appreciation of sport. What sort of things are you doing in any case? And perhaps what are the strongest messages you're picking up here, Doctor?
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and to thank the organizer for this. It's time for the world to keep moving. Should have come earlier than this, having emerged from the COVID pandemic. Many people had to stay at home. We couldn't move around. And as people in government, is our policy, right from the United Nations this year. NCD is part of the high-level meeting discussion we're going to be having. The Commonwealth has also focused on the non-communicable diseases. A lot of people are getting hypertensive diabetic now, and more so we are getting bigger, laterally, AP, and all that. So we need to keep moving. In the workplace, my experience in government in Nigeria is that we've encouraged people to move around, because this device in my hand is contributing largely to sedentary life, and people are getting more busy. Gareth mentioned children are on games and all that. So from the policy standpoint, we've made the policy on encouraging prevention, actions on non-communicable diseases, and working with Sport Federation and the International Olympic Committee we further enhance this, because I just imagine while I sat down there and I listened to Gareth that can we invest more into some diagnostics, that when I sit down in my office for like 3-4 hours, I can do one simple test that tells me my cholesterol is rising, that I need to move around. Yeah, I know we use the alert wristwatches, that you need to move around for 4,000 steps around, you know. My office is located on the 11th floor in my secretariat, and
Tell me
I
you
made
don't,
sure
you don't have a lift.
once a day, there are lifts, but once a day, I try to climb up, because I know I do that. And we encourage people to do that. The opportunities that I see coming in, collaborating with sporting agencies and outfits, is we need to do more research. I know we've done a lot. Maybe the sportsmen and women are the ones using those research products, but we need to simplify it and bring it to the office space, where we can do small exercises in the workplace to make sure that you are able to burn some calories, because many people are dying of stroke, the slump, heart attack. Just last week, I heard of 2. Driving in a traffic, head on the steering, and then the people behind were pressing the horn. The man is dead. So it's happening, and it's a big problem. We need to keep moving and move more, so that we can reduce this.
I think your presence on the panel makes it very clear that you are very aware of these issues. Can I just ask you, there are many competing challenges for government, as several people have said, and money is the biggest of all. You're all fighting over a certain pot, which is probably at the moment getting smaller, not bigger in most countries. So how hard does the health ministry push to keep that budget and to keep it for issues of preventive physical activity to prevent disease?
Yes, thank you. Now, for most of us in sub-Saharan Africa, we're still battling with communicable diseases, but gradually we have seen non-communicable disease. While you move out of communicable, you are slipping into non-communicable, that you cannot even estimate how much you will need. To manage a stroke patient, you need MRI, CT scan, and all that. These things are quite expensive. So we emphasize prevention. Schools now, some subnational governments, Nigeria has 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory, they are insisting now in some states, if you must build schools, you will not be certified except you have a sporting arena where children can play football, run around and all that on a daily basis to increase this culture. We still struggle in major cities because there are no spaces. And then you are having 4-story building schools, no playground. And we patronize them. So We, as a government, we've seen this. We know the research reports that is before us, that in the next 5 years, we know how much we are likely to lose, to reduce productivity, and in terms of lives that will be lost, and also those that will get disabled because of this. So we are pushing hard, despite the fact that there are resource constraints. Prevention is being campaign for prevention is being instituted at all levels. And every day we celebrate, like World Hypertension Day, Diabetes Day, World Health Day. We make sure at least 5-kilometer walk on those days every morning. If we are going to celebrate World Health Day now, everybody will have to come out. In my ministry, in other ministries that are associated with health, we walk around and we not come back to work until 5 kilometers is completed. Right. And this happens at least twice a month. But within the office space, personally, I move around. If I need to see my subordinates, I'll not make the call. I'll just move. And I'll look at my pedometer. How much have I covered today?
These things help. These things definitely help. Doctor, thank you very much indeed for that. I know we're pretty up on the clock again, as ever. Any hands going up for questions? Do we have one or two? I think we've got another government representative coming in.
Yes, we have a gentleman here.
As you pass that over there, I'm just going to say one question I'm not going to ask you, but how many times do you go up and down in the course of a day? So you walk up and down once, how many times?
It's easier to come down, actually. But coming up from the ground floor, up, I do it once. But once there is a repair of a power system, I'll do 3, 4 at times because I need to get to the office.
Then you just stay up until the end of the day. That's fine, understood. Tom from the Netherlands.
I hope it's working. Tom from the Netherlands, Ministry of Health, Welfare and Sports in one department. Just this afternoon, I delivered a statement on the General Action Plan on dementia at the World Health Assembly. And also that is, we know that public health should find a response to dementia, and we consider the ministry physical activity could be a part of that response. So what we do in the Netherlands, we work together with the sporting goods industry, for instance, Decathlon, when it comes to promoting cycling in cities, and also for the younger people. So Dan, you from Nike, I was interested in your story, hearing about, you talked about the ecosystem, and the government was not in the ecosystem you mentioned, but later you mentioned municipalities. But I was just wondering, what can we learn from your experience in working with governments to really promote physical activity?
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I live in the Netherlands as well, so we're neighbours. I think that's really what we should recognise the report as is very much really partly an invitation for us to collaborate. I think you've heard loudly today from the various speakers that we recognise that nobody can fix this on their own individually. And I think we recognise that as an industry and individual brands and organisations within that industry. So I think for us, yes, there's an opportunity to continue to demonstrate what we can bring to the table as an industry in terms of investment in sport and physical activity, in terms of unlocking the resources and expertise that we have. But to be able to scale, we do need those public partnerships. And I think that's where the opportunity lies. And the example I gave in France is a small example of that happening.
Thank you very much. I'm just checking, a lot of hands going up. Caroline, how much time have we got?
Maybe 2 more questions.
Oh, how many hands went up? Right. What am I bid? Yeah, thank you. 1 on each side. We'll start with the gentleman over there, please. And then we're going to have to go gender balance. The lady over here. Did you put your hand up? Yeah. Okay.
Right. Good evening. I'm Ram from the Philippine Department of Health. I may have a very similar question to the other gentlemen, but have there been any non-sport specific interventions from the industry or the IOC to address the more the determinants of physical activity, such as like road safety, active transport, and the like, to promote again, physical activity and of course engagement in sport.
Interesting question, Jane.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you for the question. It's an excellent point, and I really want to highlight the work of Olympism 365, which is the vehicle for us to do more of those grassroots community level engagement. So actually, Ollie Dudfield, if you could raise your hand, he's the expert in the room for the IOC in terms of if you want to hear more about what Olympism 365 is doing. But essentially, it is about using the power of sport and increasing physical activity. But we've also had a long history of working with cities, particularly those who are Olympic host cities, for example, promoting legacy, looking at different metrics. So thinking of the last Olympic Games in Paris 2024, that ability to, now that Paris instituted a half an hour of physical activity for children in their schools, thinking about, as you say, with healthy cities, we have to be thinking about infrastructure and active transport and not just sport itself. And so there's a whole lot of activities. We have over 550 engagements within Olympism 365 that use sport for development and physical activity and so on, and health. So I invite you to look into that further, but thank you.
And there's more information over here during drinks. Thank you. One more question here.
Hi, thank you. My name's Alex. I'm from the Young World Federation of Public Health Associations. We heard some really scary statistics actually about the young people and inactivity. And we've also talked a lot about leadership and good leadership and mentorship as well. One of the things that young people nowadays, especially online, are very sensitive to are influencers. How can we get more people like Gareth on board, where we get buy-ins from celebrities and from sports stars and from influencers into healthy products rather than, say, tobacco or drinking or fast food industry?
Good point. And perhaps not just athletes either. I mean, it's a broad field out here. Who would like to pick that up? Dan, maybe? Jane?
Yeah, I can start
Minister?
and then move on. Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that many of the brands within the industry definitely recognise. And if you think about the platform that those athletes or influencers have, I think as brands we all work with those athletes and influencers, and it's an opportunity for us to actually provide that messaging for them. And we are doing that in some cases, but I recognise there are other influences out there that Gareth talked about that we do need to challenge, and we do need to put those positive voices more to the forefront of that. And I think there's definitely something within the industry where we can continue to look at and drive that.
Kamil, did you want to say something quick?
Well, let me just join him saying that when we get role models in society to come up and talk about the goodness of keeping fit, moving around, and the effects on your immediate and future health, this will go a long way in encouraging the young ones to know that it is important to move and get fit. You don't necessarily have to play football like Gareth, but you could be as fit as Gareth if you have to move around.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
And I think too, you have to be selective about the influencer that you do select. I mean, we have done some engagement at the forum around that, and I think it's very important to make sure that the technical advice that organizations like the World Health Organization are publishing are followed. There's a lot of bad information out there too, and so sometimes the same influencer can have a great message one week and the next message might drift into something else. But I think to your point, having those role models like Gareth and others that are consistently sharing that, but also that they can see themselves. And so having those youth ambassadors as well is really an important part.
And I'll add one word to that there is in Chinese Taipei an overnight sensation at the age of 97, genuinely, who has gone viral. So now an influencer as well. Jane, I'm sorry, I'm going to halt you there. I'm going to have to call it a halt because we are up on the clock. Thank you for the questions as well. Extremely helpful. Big thank you to our panel. And if I invite you to leave the stage, because I'd just like to clear the stage now and hand this session back to the CEO of the World Federation of Sporting Goods Industry, to Emma.
Thanks very much, David. And of course, thanks also from my side to those amazing panel members that we had up here. I think what those 4 individuals showed in just a very short space of time is that, I'm being corrected, one moment, is that the opportunity still really exists to deliver a healthier, more active planet for all if the business community, governments, the Olympic movement, and our own industry can work closer together. And ultimately, if we're successful in doing this, in collectively supporting the inactive to become active, which is the focus of the report we're launching today, we'll have been able to show the very human aspect of the power of sport to touch and transform lives. And I think he's left, but I really appreciated Sir Gareth's really honest and real reflections on how he became engaged in sport and physical activity. It was so simple. Walking to school, cycling to school, forward rolls, and because he's not here to defend himself, some really dodgy apparel. I don't think he had Nike then. But it's so important that we remember that, because we are engineering that pathway to movement out of our kids' lives. And I'm going to coin a phrase from Jonathan Haidt, because we are shifting our children from a play-based childhood to a phone-based childhood. And as Dr. Li mentioned earlier at the start, we unfortunately find ourselves in a position where we are very far away from fulfilling the potential of physical activity and sport to transform lives. The WHO set back in 2018, when it published the Global Action Plan on Physical Activity, a target together with its member states to reduce inactivity by 15% by 2030. But we're here in 2025, and the latest data published last year in 2024 showed that inactivity is rising. So we are currently way off track to meet that target. But I know the brands represented here tonight, our industry, and the other speakers that we've had from across the ecosystem of sport, health, and business. We have a great drive to be change makers, and collectively, I think we are very energized by the opportunity to play our part in reversing the physical inactivity trend. And I hope that one thing you took from tonight is a feeling around that this room is optimistic about driving change. And I mentioned at the start that we are very proud to publish this report. I think Dan mentioned it a couple of times. It is an industry first for us, and we are proud of the companies in it that have stood up to be counted and said this is something we need to tackle. But we know that we need to do more. And that's why the impact report isn't just a celebration of what's been done to date, but a commitment about what we're going to do next. And within the report, and David's right, we launched it on you this evening, you haven't had a chance to review, but we make 4 very strong commitments as an industry about what we are going to do next to transform the situation we're in today. First, we are going to look to lead by example, looking to our own communities, as Andy mentioned. How can we empower and inspire our own workforce to be active? I'm not sure I would have done 11 flights of stairs, so hats off to our colleague from Nigeria. But how do we do that within our own communities in the industry? Second, my clicker is now gone, but never mind, it's up on the screen. How do we create safe and positive experiences? We heard earlier about the power of coaches, the power of those early experiences with sport, and how do we use those to make sure that people have positive experiences that encourage them to stay active throughout life? It's not just about sport and competition. It is about this as a powerful tool to make people's lives healthier and better. And what are we going to do? I think Andy rightly mentioned one of the powerful aspects of our industry is around storytelling. So we are committing in the report to make sure that we are transforming perceptions of sport, physical activity, play, and movement through one of the things that we do best, powerful storytelling. And finally, and this one is really critical, we are committing to shift our lens to make sure that we are focusing in on moving the inactive. So engaging those communities and people on the sidelines, looking specifically to children, to girls, and to those others who are facing significant barriers to activity. Because we will not change where we are today if we focus on getting the already active to be more active. We have to focus on those segments of the community. But as I said earlier, I think multiple people have touched on it. We cannot do it alone. And so we, more than ever, must pull together across sectors to address the global health crisis presented by physical inactivity. So we are so delighted you joined us this evening, but I do have some asks of you. But before I make those asks, I'm conscious of the room that I am in, a room of people who are normally working in public health sectors. And I do want to address a topic that I know is current in public health circles. We are a business association. As you heard at the start, we represent for-profit companies within the sporting goods industry. And we are aware that many people within the health sector are discussing and considering how do we best handle commercial determinants of health. But I want to say, I hope what you heard tonight was a genuine energy and passion to join you as part of a health promotion exercise. We don't believe commercial determinants of health needs to be a negative topic. We believe we are a health enhancing industry. And as you have joined us tonight, we believe that you also want to. Dr. Li mentioned it earlier. There is a great opportunity still, an untapped opportunity in public and private sector relationships and partnerships. And we believe that with this industry, on this topic, there is that unique alignment of public and private sector goals. And that means there's a tangible opportunity to take that potential, which we've all talked about for many years, right? The potential of public and private sector partnerships, and to translate that potential into real impact for health and society. So I am also using our voice, this opportunity tonight, right before you go for food. That's really mean, I'm sorry, but just a few more minutes to say we have two very specific asks for you. And in the short term, and this has only really occurred in the last week or so, we invite all of you that have a voice and opportunity to strengthen the visibility and the integration of physical activity into the Zero Draft Political Declaration for the UN high-level meeting on NCDs, the 4th. I think it was referenced a couple of times this evening, and that document has a name that is even longer than WFSGI, but it is so critical for the future of treatment of NCDs. I've had a chance to look at it. I know many of you will. Physical activity is referenced twice, and the references are not strong. So if I could have one ask of you in the next week, I know you've only met us, most of you tonight, but it is to think about how could we better strengthen the visibility and the references to physical activity in that document. And in the long term, and I hope you've heard that through this evening, we really invite all of you to have faith and to renew your support for the implementation of systems-based change, particularly on physical activity. I've said before, we hope you heard the passion and the drive in the room tonight. That is authentic. That's authentic to who we are as an industry. And I'm not sure who mentioned it. It is right that 2023 is late for our collaboration. But we are coming to the party, and we are coming to the party strong. And we are coming with solutions on the challenge on physical inactivity. And we are ready to understand how can we better partner with you in the room to scale up the impact of some of the interventions that are featured in this report. Before I wrap up, and then I promise we can move to drinks and some food, I do want to say some really important thank yous to the people in the room who made tonight possible. First, again, to our great colleagues at the World Health Organization in the Physical Activity Unit, to Fiona, to Rudiger, to Wana, to Shelley, to Karina, and of course to Dr. Li. We wouldn't be here without your belief in what I've just said, that this potential can be translated into real-world impact. Second, of course, to all the companies that are in the room tonight who've put their hand up and featured in this report to say that our industry can be a powerful force for good, and we are ready to work out together how we deliver on that. I have to say a big thanks to David. He jumped in last minute. I might have commandeered him, but I know how passionate he is about this topic, and I think he presented a wonderful evening for you. And of course, finally, I can't say thanks without saying thanks to the amazing team at WFSGI who helped deliver this evening. There are many of them in the room tonight, up the back. I think they've been making you all feel very, very welcome. But my particular thanks must go to Linda and to Joanna, who have led the communications around this, who've helped us pull together this report, and that is putting out our voice very powerfully on where we want to go and where we want to step up to in physical activity. And finally, of course, to my colleague Caroline. She joined us just under 2 years ago now. Oh no, not even that, only just over a year ago. And I think Fiona would agree with me, the pace of change that we've been able to achieve with her and the team solely focused on this work with our member companies has been phenomenal. So thank you so much for everything you've done. And finally, thank you again for joining us this evening. I really hope that this evening is not the first. It is the first, but not the last event that we will have the opportunity to engage really with the health community at a World Health Assembly. And we really look forward to continuing our discussions over some drinks and some food. Thank you so much.